If you are steeped in the mind-body realm like me and have been working in that area as a coach or a practitioner, then you're already intimately familiar with this idea of the body keeping a score. The Body Keeps a Score, the book, is obviously very well known and a text that has helped many people to understand the idea that events from earlier in our lives and traumas can have an impact on our health and on the body. I applaud that work and the amount of impact that it has had in helping people make the mind-body connection that they may never have seen before. But what really changed the picture for me is the idea that maybe our bodies are not failing or not breaking down as a result of that earlier experience in our life. Learning about the framework of German New Medicine drastically changed my viewpoint on what the body is actually doing. And rather than thinking about the body keeping the score and somehow keeping tabs on what's happened to us, and later we experience this catastrophic breakdown or failure as a result, instead, to me, a more apt way to describe it is something more like the Mission Impossible theme. In German New Medicine, what we see is that based on an acutely distressing event in our lives, something that catches us off guard, that is distressing in the moment, that makes us feel isolated, our subconscious's perception of that event sets in motion a special biological program that helps our tissue in our brain and a corresponding organ to adapt in meaningful and purposeful ways, specifically to help us overcome the type of event that we've experienced. So rather than seeing our bodies as failing or breaking down as a result of something bad that happened to us before, instead, what we're seeing is that our psyches, our subconscious, together with our brain and our body, is responding purposefully and meaningfully to events in our lives and is adapting in a specific way based on the nuance of the type of event that we experienced. So, for example, if we felt attacked and our psyche perceived that as an attack conflict in the layer of our skin, the dermis layer, then we would respond to that attack conflict by actually physically growing more cells in that layer of our skin to protect us. And that can manifest as a blemish like acne, or at a more intense level as something we would call a melanoma, a shield for our skin to help protect us from that perceived attack. If we experience something that to our psyches was indigestible, we just couldn't digest it, we couldn't stomach it, then some part of our digestive system, depending on the specific nuance, would then respond by helping us to physically digest that thing in our lives by producing more cells in the intestine to increase our digestive capacity. So this is a very biological purpose and meaning that helps to explain why symptoms arise, not as a random failure or an external attack, but as a purposeful adaptation. So how then do we account for the impacts of childhood traumas and things that happen in the earlier parts of our lives? I think there's a couple of ways to look at this and incorporate the German New Medicine framework as well. So what happens in the earlier part of our lives is no doubt meaningful to us. So those early events can certainly set in motion special biological programs at that time in our lives. Those programs may stay active and go on running continuously, but what's more likely is that those early experiences prime our psyche or subconscious to view the world and experience the world in a particular way. And as we go through our lives from that point, we are more primed to experience the same type of conflict event that we experienced early in our lives, because that early exposure kind of sets up the belief system and the expectation of how we view the world and the way our subconscious is interpreting the events that happen to us. So when we have, say, a chronic symptom, that's because we have a tissue adaptation or a special biological program that's getting turned on over and over again. And that's either because we're re-experiencing new events that are of that same type of conflict to our psyche, or we're experiencing triggers that remind us of an earlier event that our psyche sees as warning signs and turns on that tissue adaptation in an effort to help us. So we can see how powerful it is to understand what's happened to us in our lives and to look back and find the patterns that may originate even from early childhood or events that happened a long time ago. But it's significantly different than saying our bodies are now failing or breaking down or getting diseased as a result of those earlier experiences. Instead, within the German New Medicine framework, what we understand is that our bodies are entering adaptations in order to help us overcome that distressing event that we experienced. And those adaptations have a meaningful biological purpose that are specifically designed to help us through that event. And to me, that perspective changes everything about the way that we investigate our symptoms and the way that we view our bodies, not as keeping the score per se, but instead embarking on new missions all the time to help us through these events in our lives. That is the perspective that's made all the difference for me, and I am so excited to share it here with you. Thanks, and I hope that helps.